Hey, it's Goz. Before we get into this Godzilla Media podcast, I want to tell you about our friends over at Tech East Fire and Water Restoration. Your best way back to normal. TEFirewater.com is their website. Fire, mold, water damage to the place you're living in right now. What do you do? So many people, like myself, freak out because they're not exactly sure who to call, who they can trust when something awful happens to your home, and who can fix it. That's when Tech East Fire and Water Restoration will step up for you and help you get back to normal. Mike Corda and his team over there have done a fantastic job. And my pal Levac, man. Levac is learning more about the restoration business. You can hit up Levac on social media, at the Jeff Levac if you want, if you've got issues going on in your homes here in the capital region. By the way, Levac and Goz, Saturday, July 31st from 3:30 to 5 o'clock, we'll have our little pregame show ready for you. And I say a little because we're going to be jammed in that office inside the Albany Empire spot, inside the Times Union Center, getting you ready. If you want to listen to Levac and Goz, Apple, Spotify, live on Godzilla Media's YouTube page, and also on the Tech East Fire and Water Restoration Facebook page, facebook.com/TEFirewater. That's where you can listen and watch the broadcast. Your best way back to normal, TEFirewater.com. Thank you to Tech East Fire and Water Restoration. Also, thank you to our friends over at Mohawk Honda. Mohawk Honda, you're looking to trade in your vehicle this summer, selection is king at Mohawk Honda. So many other car dealerships across upstate New York, especially. You're looking to make the move this summer, and they don't have what you want. Now you're forced in that spot of you don't know what to do. Are you getting the right deal for your trade back? Are you going to drive off that lot with the vehicle that you came looking for? Don't have that happen to you. I'm telling you, as someone who drives around the pilot in the capital region, who knows about the situations of what a bad vehicle can have the impact on your life, don't have that happen to you. You can trust the people at Mohawk Honda. That's the key word, especially when you're going through this car buying experience. We're talking about the Harridan family who've been doing this for decades. You're talking about people like Cam McKenna, who I bought my pilot from. Wonderful people like Greg Johnson and Andy Gallagher, and more about the management team at Mohawk Honda. They want to work with you. If you're trading in your vehicle this summer to get exactly what you deserve back, plus the car you want to drive off the lot with, and maybe you're just looking to make a change, Mohawk Honda is the place for you to upgrade your vehicle today. Right there, Freeman's Bridge Road in Glenville. Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. Stop in this summer and take advantage of the great deals always going on. Follow them on social media more so you can find out about the new rides coming into Mohawk Honda. Now, let's get into this week's edition of Goz on the Go. All the sports talk you need in a nice, tidy 30 minutes. And we start this Goz on the Go with the New York Yankees in the trade that just broke tonight. Joey Gallo, the slugger, the home run hitter from the Texas Rangers, is on the move. He's going to the Bronx. He's going to play in pinstripes for the New York Yankees. Initially, when I saw this trade break on social media, it's one of those double, triple takes where you're like, this is a fake account, right? This is not the real Jeff Passan or Buster Olney. Someone's trolling because Joey Gallo is such a big name. We're talking an all-star caliber player joining the Yankees. And as we've talked about, especially if you live in the capital region or you just love following the Yankees, every single summer, it will never end. The biggest names possible are always rumored to be going to the Yankees because that's just how the franchise attitude has been. They got to make a big move. They got to make a big move. Who are they going to bring in? It's the biggest names. It's the Yankees. Who's it? I heard the other day someone was talking about Scherzer coming to the Yankees again. What? Starling Marte is what some people were bored by about who it could have been for the Yankees. He ends up not going to the Yankees to the trade deadline. Instead, it's Joey Gallo, who is a big name, as we just mentioned. First instincts for this trade was, boy, Stanton, Judge, and Gallo is going to strike out a lot. They're going to miss a lot. But when you start evaluating what the American League playoff situation looks like, more than likely Tampa and Boston are both going to get in. Chicago is going to absolutely run away with the division in the AL Central. And out in the AL West, Houston's going to run away with it. So the other two quality teams that are left are the A's and the Mariners. So you're telling me if I had to pick between one of these four teams to be the final representative of the wild card game, between the Yankees, the A's, and the Mariners, and either Tampa or Boston, but again, I'm just assuming one of those other two AL East teams is going to get that other spot, I will take the Yankees over the A's and the Mariners. Why wouldn't I? The A's are unloading players right now. They want to get out and dump everything they can, and you got to be frustrated. Shout out to my guy Sean Martin on the M&M Across the Board podcast. He had a great rant about the A's. Shout out to my guy Brady Farkas out in Vermont doing his thing. He's a big Mariner fan, but both of those guys would be frustrated because it doesn't seem, even to this point, the Mariners are the longest professional sports team right now in North America who hasn't gone to the playoffs. They seem to not want to break that streak. The A's don't want to break the streak. And the Yankees were aggressive. So as much as Gallo and Stanton and Judge might strike out, give me an argument why Seattle and Oakland is better. I don't have one. So that's why I think the Yankees can catch them. You could tell me it's pitching, but we're going to see Seattle play New York 4 times in August. We're going to see New York play Oakland 4 times in August. Whoever would have thought, especially with how different the season is and with Boston being better and sitting at the top of the division as we hit the final days of July, that matchups in August against Seattle and Oakland, we could look back and say are the most important series of the season for the New York Yankees. You got power, you got a hitter against okay pitching in the American League. Yankee fan, this is it. To do the cliche like my old coach Phil Merrill at Salve High School said in one of our final playoff games, we're all in. Like the World Series of Poker, push the chips to the middle of the table. That's what the New York Yankees have done. And if you're a Yankee fan, it's why you love your franchise. As often as you may criticize whether or not they're being aggressive enough, when they are aggressive in comparison to other franchises, they go light years ahead of them. The Yankees, to their core, are aggressive, and they made a move for Joey Gallo. And because they always want to be a competitor, they're always in the mix. And it goes back to that case. And it goes back to what happened this past weekend involving the Boston Red Sox, where the Yankees are so close to throwing a no-hitter, they make a move to the bullpen, and they lose the game to their rival. Where every Yankee fan on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, started lighting up Aaron Judge and wanted his job. He wanted him. Bye-bye. See ya. Gone. It was the most heat I've seen and heard Yankee fan put on Aaron Judge. And if you were a Yankee fan or a New York paper or media company, that should have been everything you talked about. Watching the hate come from Yankee fan. This is it. This was supposed to be the championship team over the next 2 to 3 seasons for the Yankees. This was supposed to be the birth of a new dynasty with young talent. Instead, you've got Aaron Judge hitting into double plays. And you've got a team fighting for a 1-game wild card berth. And you've got this team losing to their rival and battling against the Tampa Bay Rays, who have nowhere close to the amount of talent, but they continue to win more games. This is it. The future of Aaron Judge, the future of Aaron Boone, the future of Brian Cashman. If the New York Yankees are not a playoff team, you and I can have a discussion again, whether it's here on the podcast by leaving a comment, whether it's on social media at Tom Gaz, TOMGOZZ, or on Instagram, Getting There with Gaz, about if it's it for all 3 of them. If they're all done wearing pinstripes because they couldn't get it done and make it to the playoffs and keep the Blue Jays or Mariners or A's at bay from stealing their spot. This is it for this 2021 Yankee team. They made an aggressive move and said, this is the roster we believe can get us back to the playoffs and contend for a World Series championship. And if we can't, changes are coming. And those are the names to wonder about. Aaron Judge, Aaron Boone, and even Brian Cashman. Hey, remember last week on Gaz on the Go where I told you that Texas and Oklahoma would hold off because they wouldn't give a conference a 4-year heads up that they would leave in 2025 as soon as July of 2021? And that Aaron Rodgers was probably just going to not show up for the Green Bay Packers after all the stink that he made over the last 3 months. Remember when I said all that last week? How did those predictions go? There it is. A nice whiff from old Ghazi Bear, right? Yeah. Let's start with the Aaron Rodgers stuff first. First of all, rocking the Kevin Malone Dunder Mifflin Game Boy video game style shirt against the Chili. And I want to use a quote from the Chili episode. Rewatching that, it's such a mundane clip from The Office. You think it's not like a legendary scene. It's so fast. It's under a minute. It's just dumb Kevin spilling the chili. But there's t-shirts. I bought my sister a pair of socks of that stupid scene of the opening episode of The Office. So yeah, besides the Office reference, okay, did we need the last 3 months of this? And one reporter opened up and asked, what do you want to get out of all this stuff the last 3 months? And Rodgers went on this 4-minute answer. And I love how ESPN and other outlets responded to his answer. Aaron Rodgers goes unfiltered. Ooh, wait till you hear what Aaron Rodgers had to say at the press conference today. He told the truth. He was authentic and honest and told the story of what happened. Sounds like an episode of Getting There with Goss. So I appreciate Aaron Rodgers doing all of those things, and I appreciate him telling his side of the story of why he decided to have these type of conversations with his employer, the Green Bay Packers, and more. So good for Aaron Rodgers coming back. I think the subliminal tweeting stuff with Devontae Adams was a bit much with the Last Dance reference to the Netflix and ESPN documentary, of course, of the 90s Bulls. That was too much. For the season, I don't love what's setting up for the Packers. Do you? Don't you think it's being more of Aaron Jones this season? Aaron Jones, people question if he was going to come back to the Green Bay Packers. He did. Do you think that every time there's a mistake made, that there's not going to be some back and forth between Rodgers and LaFleur and management and a receiver that they made a move with and everything else? Think about this. We'll do the comparison again to the 1998 Bulls. You saw the drama that happened involving Phil Jackson and Jerry Krause and Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. Why would you want to sign up for that unless you've got the 30 for 30 already planned? Do you think that's a good place to work for? Do you want to enjoy what your death date is? No matter what happens at the end of the season, you know you're leaving. How would you treat the people around you? You may have been a senior in college or high school before. Did you have senioritis? If you had the opportunity to tell off every teacher, every professor, every boss that you had, and no matter what you said, they couldn't fire you. They're not going to fire Aaron Rodgers during the season. They're not going to let him go. They're not going to let him fail the class. Is that a healthy environment that you would want to work in? No. So with all that drama around the Green Bay Packers and some issues in which they haven't been able to get over the hump and actually win the NFC as an overall conference, I don't feel great about the Packers. The Bears have improved this offseason with a quarterback upgrade. The Minnesota Vikings are always a playoff team, even though the fans out in Minnesota doubt what Kirk Cousins can do. The Lions still stink. But I don't love the Green Bay Packers this upcoming season. That is too much drama for me to get into and invest in. Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great quarterback. When it's all said and done, he's going to be dancing around a top 5 conversation of how good he was in his career. That's how good another Super Bowl can be to his resume. But he showed up. Oh, and also that Texas-Oklahoma thing. Let's get back to that quickly. Why give them a 4-year heads up just because you want to? I remember reading this earlier and thinking, Texas and Oklahoma have decided that in 2025, they will not renew their contract. Wow. I don't know how often people decide what they want for lunch or dinner one day in advance. But these guys, Texas and Oklahoma, have decided 4 years in advance because of these TV contracts they want out of the Big 12. They're going to the SEC. It's a done deal. As we touched on before, it's been talked about for months. And now reports are circulating tonight that ESPN has been sent a letter from the Big 12 that you're not talking to anybody anymore. Yeah, you're our TV partner, but we've got proof that you, as an ESPN media company, have actually been reaching out to schools and telling them, jump out of the Big 12. Do what Texas and Oklahoma did. Don't stay with them. Oh, it's going to get dirty in college football. Besides the obvious money situation where Texas and Oklahoma can make $30 to $50 more million as an athletic program to making this move. Maybe we'll see all these power conferences come together in the future, but that was rumored 10 to 15 years ago if that was the future was going to be. The Big 12 can pick up these few schools and they'll be fine. I know it's time to freak out, but think about these markets. Pick up Houston. Houston's a top 5 market. If the Houston Cougars can be in the Big 12 and they were one of these mid-major schools with Case Keenum that almost made a run and crashed the college football tournament, pick up Houston. Pick up SMU. Yes, the Pony Excess, another 30 for 30 reference. Eric Dickerson and Craig James and more of the SM. Shout out to Byron Hunt of the SMU and everybody else, but they're in the Dallas market. So now we're talking about 2 teams that can actually step into top 5 markets and be successful with Texas as a powerhouse when it comes to college football. And I'm talking about the state, not the Longhorns. So you get the Dallas market, you get the Houston market, and then you can play around and say, is UCF, the Orlando market, what we want? Boise State's always been trying to jump from conference to conference. Do you think Boise State, 15 years plus of building that program, is good enough to have a national ranking? Boise, Idaho is not in comparison to those other 3 cities. Do you talk about the Cincinnati Bearcats? Hartford, Connecticut, and the UConn Huskies football program would get buried So unfortunately, UConn did this to themselves. But why can't the Big 12 be just fine with Houston, Dallas, Orlando, and Cincinnati or Boise as the replacement schools? BYU would be in that mix too somewhere. But BYU is going to be fine being independent. Zach Wilson and company, they can do that independent thing. They got enough fan base out there in the mountain area where they can roll with independent and see how it goes. The Big 12 is already trying to have teams jump off that, and that's why this ESPN thing is going down. But they might be in better shape than ESPN wants to tell us they might be in. Shout out to Barstool making the move with the Arizona Bowl. If you've missed the news, the Arizona Bowl will basically be called the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl, where Dave Portnoy and his company are now official sponsors of a bowl game. There is a battle here now between traditional media versus non-traditional media versus the Athletics, Stuart Mandel, Howie Mandel, Dave Portnoy, and the Stoolies. If you missed it, Stewart basically said business is business when it comes to making these decisions for college football bowl games. And he seemed jealous that Barstool's platforms and channels were going to be the home for the Arizona Bowl in comparison to the traditional media spot of television. And I'm struggling as someone who now has gone from traditional media to non-traditional media of why people who are older in the business are so resistant to change. And we'll talk about change here with the Simone Biles story in a second, but we have to sit on like why there is a resistance. Is it a resistance of uncertainty? Are media journalists, writers, television anchors, radio hosts nervous that these people are going to take their jobs because they're doing it different than they are? Is it the fact that these products might be actually better? And the reason we didn't have shows streaming on YouTube and websites and off our phone and anything else in the past because we couldn't, because technology hadn't caught up? Why do writers and bloggers, more so journalists and columnists and hosts on television or radio, always want to blast the new school people like Barstool and everything else? Do they not understand that when they do things like that, it unites the forces of the Stoolies? It shows them that us against the world mentality that people want to embrace. That's my problem, where you're presenting MAC versus Mountain West football to a brand new audience who may not follow those conferences, but now they have a rooting interest in that. And sure, sports gambling going to be part of it and investing in the games. Yeah, of course. But all those things, when you bring eyes and attention and popularity and social media engagement and more to the sport, those are all good things. I retweeted a lawyer who practices in the Fort Lauderdale area named Darren Heitner, who said this: traditional broadcast is dead. Traditional sponsorship is dead. You can hate on the Arizona Bowl's deal with Barstool Sports to stream the game exclusively, but as their CEO Erica Nardini noted, this is a watershed moment for rethinking where and how games are broadcast. That's as simple as that. Whether it's 5-year-olds or 15 years old, you may watch something on your TV as a monitor. All you do is hit the Chromecast button or the Chrome button or whatever you do to actually put it up on the TV. It doesn't have to go through traditional companies like it used to. And Barstool is breaking down those barriers. So as much as you may disagree with some of their past content, it's foolish to ignore the success and the moves that they're making. I'm not a stoolie by any stretch, but I would be dumb with somebody who's running a non-traditional media company to be aware of the success and where these type of moves are taking the sports business for the future. Team USA basketball doesn't dominate anymore like it used to, and it never will. The expectations for U.S. basketball are so through the roof, they may never change for some people who follow the sport. If you follow the Dream Team, you're never going to have people taking pictures with Team USA anymore. This is not about that. Everybody around the world wants to beat the United States in basketball. And because they lost to France, it isn't a big deal. It's not. I know it's the first time they lost in 17 years in an opening game, but France is good. Go back and look at the history of Team USA basketball since 2008. Twice, they've had single-digit games against Spain. They've had a single-digit game against France. They had another one they just lost to France. They've had a single-digit game against Serbia. We can run through all these countries that they've actually competed against and kept it close against. You want to call them the overall favorites every single season, that's fine. That's okay. Team USA has put themselves in that spot. But think about the perspective of what the world put Team USA in. Think back to 2004, when Team USA lost to Argentina in the semifinals. If I told you that on a world perspective, that's considered a bigger upset than the Miracle on Ice, would you laugh at me? Because it is. Think about that. Not to go my full Miracle on Ice rant, but when you had a team called the Dream Team and people around the world cared about that country so much that 12 years later they actually lost, and now thinking back in the year 2021 to think that 40 years ago the Team USA was actually an underdog in any sport is hard for people to comprehend, especially against the Russian USSR team that had no NHL players on it. It's hard to explain those things, but that's how much of an upset it was when Argentina beat the USA in basketball. Yes, we know as Americans it wasn't the best team we could put out there. It was far from the best American players, but it was a wake-up call for the country that we just can't show up and put whoever we want out on the court and win. That's what's happening now. And by the way, this is going to sound un-American and anti-American, but it's actually a better product when the games are close. Yeah, it's fun to watch Joey Chestnut, my boy, pound down 70 hot dogs and blow away the competition. Yes, it's fun to have dynasties and ease past it. But if you want to see exciting basketball and see better players in the NBA and the college ranks, then having a competitive world sport only improves those things for a popular sport here in the U.S. and, again, a popular sport around the world. Just because the games are close and Team USA is being challenged doesn't mean it's a bad thing for the country and the sport overall. And if Team USA wins gold, that's the expectation. If they get upset, maybe this sets a new bar of, okay, we've always got to put our best out on the court because now the world is caught up with us. When you're listening to this, it is Thursday, and tonight's the NBA draft. The Detroit Pistons have the number 1 overall pick. More than likely, they're going to take Cade Cunningham. There's been talks of it's going to be Evan Mobley maybe in the mix. Jalen Green's another player who's been talked about a little bit. But Cade Cunningham seemed to be the slam dunk pick for the entire time, the Oklahoma State standout. But from day one, I remember when Mark Berman came on the air with Levac and I, back on a traditional media platform, and said, it's the race for Cade. Cade Cunningham is the pick the Knicks need to take the step into the future, and the Knicks end up being really good this season. That's how long ago it's been since everyone knew it was going to be Cunningham. So if Cunningham goes 1 to the Pistons, and then it's likely Green and Mobley. And I remember Mobley playing for USC and watching the tournament. I was watching with my buddies back in Syracuse, and that was my big upset. I wanted Drake to pull it off. I love picking those 68 winners to get to the round of 64 and pull off an upset. And I immediately knew 5 minutes into tip-off that I made a terrible decision. That Mobley was going to dominate Drake. And as badly as I wanted Drake to pull off the upset, it was not going to happen because Mobley was that good. And by the way, is Mobley the best player who's been rocking the short shorts? As somebody who rocked the shorts as someone over the knees of the early 2000s, seeing Mobley rock the short shorts made it feel like he was throwback, but old school is now new school again. Those 3 players in particular are good, and I love Jalen Suggs, the former Gonzaga player. At times this season, I thought he was a flat-out best player in the country. Mr. Arizona, as you've heard about 1,000 times in football, now flips over to basketball, and hopefully he'll be somewhere in that top 5, top 10 range. He might go as high as 4. Maybe the Raptors take him that fast, and maybe the Magic grab him at 5, anywhere after that. Is it because the college basketball season was all over the place and we didn't get the non-conferences we usually do? Was it because March Madness was just in one state? The fact that some athletes now have more eligibility? Whatever it may be, as big as a college basketball fan as I am I just getting too old for the NBA draft? It's getting harder and harder every season to feel really connected to some of these prospects because some of these guys will play overseas, which is fine. Go get your money, do your thing. You get about, 3 to 6 months of our freshmen and they're on their way. You might see some of these players come from the G League. It's more difficult to follow the top prospects in the NBA because the NBA drafts on potential. The NBA hopes that in 3 to 4 years, these guys will be standout players for us, and he may not even be the best player on his own college team. But that's how they draft. After Mobley and Suggs and Cunningham and everybody else, I wish I could give you look out for so-and-so. or this guy could be the steal of the draft, or the Knicks have to land this. The Knicks have now pushed themselves to being a playoff team. The Knicks are in that spot. I can't tell you that they got to have like a big-time young body. If I needed to give you one name that maybe would be best for the Knicks, how about Butler from Baylor? Jared Butler from Baylor can play, man. Like, he's tough, he's physical, he can come off the bench for the Knicks next season, be that role-type player after Butler helped Baylor win the national championships. There's a name if you want one. How about Jared Butler goes out there? Maybe even the Knicks can land like a Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who was talked about as being one of the top players in the country before the clock swung over to 2021. In that December frame, people thought the Villanova Wildcat might be the best player in the country. Now projections are pointing him to the second round. So there's the two players that would be nice. Butler and Robinson Earl. There you go, Knicks fans. Those are some players that could be pretty much a standout. But do I need Zion from now on? Do I need a loaded, dominant team? What do I need to make the NBA draft? Do I need to get younger? The second round needs to be more productive because the second round is basically a bunch of nobodies who get drafted and they just hang on to the rights. Boy, I love the NBA Finals being in July. The momentum of the NBA draft is out of it for me when it comes to the pool of prospects this season. Here at Godzilla Media, we're so happy to bring you all this coverage of all different sports, takes, opinions, personalities, and more, and we're able to do that thanks to great people like our friends over at Johnstone Supply in Troy. Johnstone Supply in Troy has been serving the capital region since 1945 for all your HVAC needs, and they always go out to support local small businesses. We're talking about a place right there on 6th Avenue in Troy that can help you and your home today. Now, if you have more information about Johnstone Supply in Troy, hit up my guy Tom. George is the best. And by the way, if you've missed more about Johnstone Supply Troy, check out an old episode of Getting There with Goz where you can go back and learn more about the business and how they got to where they are today. Call them today at 518-272-5922. Again, 518-272-5922. And don't forget to follow them on Facebook as well. Facebook.com/Johnstone Supply Troy NY. Inside your home, you're always taking care of it. HVAC needs and more. Johnstone Supply in Troy wants to help you continue to enjoy the best home you can. So whether it's heating, ventilating, or air conditioning services, Johnstone Supply in Troy is ready to work with you. Now let's close out this week's Guys on the Go, the conversation about Simone Biles. Remember earlier in the podcast we talked about change and how people feel about those things. And if you know me, you know that I'm a person who at all costs does his best to resist change. And it's not because I'm not open. It's not because I don't want to learn new things. It has nothing to do with that. I'm just someone to an extreme level struggles with doing things for the first time. I am somebody who needs to practice. I am not a quick learner. I am one of those people. I'll give you an example. I went axe throwing a couple years ago, and I was doing it for the first time, and some people would catch on fast, and then you're that person in your group who's clearly the worst at it. And it's not just axe throwing. It's like anything that I'm doing for the first time. I will always be the worst person at to start off. And it'll be like, okay, he's bad at it. And then it's like, all right, that's funny. And then you're not getting better. So then it's like, all right, now people want to help you. And now you feel like, okay, you don't have to help me. It's not actually that big of a deal. And then it gets to like, oh man, like this is kind of sad. It goes from funny to let's help them to sad. That's how bad I am at doing things for the first time. And that's okay. Like I can embrace that. I've accepted that and that's fine. I struggle with change, whether it's what you were brought up with, where you live, it's what you believe in, your favorite sports teams, your religion, your political views, your mindset on anything. That's what it takes to be a human being. That you may have thought something at one point in your life, and because of your life travels, experiences, education, those original thoughts change. That goes from being a teenager to an adult to a father, to a husband. Those are all great things when it happens in life, when you embrace change to make yourself a better person. And I bring that up because of my role as a sports commentator, a sports broadcaster. When I entered this field of sports media, if you broke down the box score in the late 1990s and early 2000s on this audio platform, which was radio at the time, people thought that was the greatest thing ever. People would tune into sports talk radio shows to hear exactly what happened in the game and what the inside stuff was post-game interviews because there were no other ways to get it. And it was considered good content, but some have resisted change and realized that's not good content. Some people, again, in this platform believe if you take callers all the time and people call into the show, that was considered good content. People don't tune into Jim Rome to listen to Brad and Corona. People listen to those shows to hear those hosts. But it needed to change. And that's what our next step is here when we talk about sports and broadcasters and commentary and being a sports fan and everything else. And I fully admit this, that the Simone Biles thing is hard to have a comparison to. I initially wanted to use a comparison of concussions, of how we viewed concussions in athletes differently, because in the past you got your bell rung. It just went back out there, but we studied more. Scientists, professors told us the real impact of a concussion. How I viewed athletes growing up as a kid and early in my career, and this was not given pushback, was that in the fourth quarter, in Game 7, in the biggest moments, how did you perform? Legacies were carved out, and we began to hold these athletes in such high regard because of their performance late in games. On the flip side of that, if you did not perform well in the big games, you were considered a choker, someone who blew it under pressure. Names like Bill Buckner or Greg Norman or the Buffalo Bills, the names in which when it got to the moment you had to step up and make a play, it didn't happen. And now even saying that out loud and pointing out people like Norman and Buckner and Norwood, it doesn't feel right. It almost stings and makes you feel uncomfortable saying that out loud now, because even the tension, the atmosphere, however you want to describe it in the sports world, has changed. Because I will tell you, I've talked this out so many times with people that are close to me about how they feel about Simone Biles. Because when you have the GOAT animal stitched onto your uniform, when you have a documentary about how great you are as a gymnast, when you're going out and performing commercials and advertisements and things like that, and the moment comes and you don't take the beam, it rubs people the wrong way. And I could already hear what the mental health people and people who embrace and look at mental health differently are going to say about that. Guys, I don't care what other people think about me. I care about myself, and that's totally right. I go back to Royce White 10 years ago, where Royce White suffered so much anxiety. He didn't want to get on a plane and travel, and people didn't know how to accommodate it. And it was so different that people weren't ready for that change yet in sports, and how different the world's been 10 years from now, how different it will be 10 years from now. I've touched on Naomi Osaka in past episodes, and Naomi Osaka has bounced early in the tennis rounds of the Olympics. But Osaka and Simone Biles have started this new wave for athletes that mental health comes first. And sports fans and people who have suffered from mental health embrace that. And if that is something that is helping people, that is courageous. If someone who's suffering silently with mental health sees what Simone Biles did and said, okay, I can be like her because I'm suffering from this, that is inspiring people. That's no doubt about that. If there's a situation where she's talking about this and putting this out in front and that becomes her legacy, she may be happy alone with that. I did something on the biggest stage possible where other people like me may not have had the courage to do that. And because of that, I've helped athletes 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. That's the perspective you can have. But when we get to the core of the issue, if we just want to do sports talk to its real, true heart of what do you think Simone Biles did, she didn't perform. So when we have these GOAT conversations and what happened in the biggest moments, if we're going to be fair and let Simone Biles be a role model and an athlete that is setting a new tone for future athletes when it comes to mental health, we cannot ignore the end result. You can't have it one way. If you want to acknowledge her bravery when it comes to the world of mental health and stepping aside from the events, you also have to note that she did not compete with her teammates. You have to note that the United States gymnast team, at least in certain events when we tape this going into Wednesday night into Thursday morning, did not medal where they thought they would. So that's a part of the story as much as it is with Simone Biles coming out. What the result of her teammates were. So, I think it's the fairest way to do the Simone Biles thing. Me as a broadcaster who grew up with different ways in which we would have viewed this as choking or blowing it or quitting is not the same way I view it now in 2021. There is no denying that people were inspired by what Simone Biles did. There is no question to that. But if we are going to embrace the inspiration and the bravery it took for her to take a stance on mental health, we also have to embrace the criticism and the end result of what happened because of her decision. Just like an athlete suffering an injury, whether it be mental health, an ankle, a leg, whatever it may be that may prevent he or her from taking their stance in their athletic performance, how did it impact their team? In this case, it negatively impacted Team USA in hopes of where they wanted to land. And if you want to question what's going to happen in future events, that's a fair criticism. Will Simone Biles be prepared to take on future events? Just like we'd question a quarterback if they take the field in the fourth quarter and they haven't performed yet to the ability we hope they could. Just like a basketball player who steps to the line with the game on the line with free throws they have to knock down to win it. She is in that type of ring. She is in that coliseum. She is in that, just like everybody else who's a willing participant to take place in a competitive nature. That nature will not change in sports and athletics. So we have to embrace both, that her decision negatively impacted her team just like an injury would. That has to be embraced too. That's this week's Guys on the Go. I hope you enjoyed it. And by the way, that conversation about Simone Biles, Yankee talk and more, we're going to continue to have all that Saturday, 3:30 to 5 o'clock, live from the Albany Empire offices. Make sure to check out Techie's Fire and Water Restoration's Facebook page, Godzilla Media's YouTube page, and more to watch the live show. If you don't agree with my takes, you disagree with my takes, you agree with them, I want to hear from you during the show. I'd love to have a conversation with you during it, and I'll respond. Interactive show. It's the best part about it. Levac and Goz back on Saturday. Until then, catch you next week on this edition, Goz on the Go. Appreciate you listening. Again, see you this weekend. See you next week.